Hey guys, it's been a month since I started this podcast. I'm super grateful for you tuning into my podcast each week. It's amazing to see people from all over the world listening to this podcast. I just want to say, seriously, I really appreciate you. And I hope you have learned something from our guest speakers on the show. Each month, I am selecting one reviewer of my show and give out a 1-year subscription to all my online video lessons. So the winner for this month is Tusham. This is the reviewer's username on iTunes. So thanks Tusham for the great review. You can just go to ChineseTalkEase.com/contact to send me a message and I will set up the membership for you. If you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate you to write me a review on iTunes. Even if you don't want to write a review, I would still recommend you to check out my Traveler's course that I'm giving out for free. This is my gift for you. You will get 34 high-quality video lessons that will help you to learn enough Chinese to survive in China. To be honest, I've spent a lot of time to create those videos. So if you are just a beginner, this is the perfect course for you. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Just go to ChineseTalkEase.com and sign up to the free Traveler course. It's really that simple. Without further ado, let's start our episode number 8.
Embarrassing moment, culture insights, proven methods to achieve Chinese fluency. Skip that learning curve with the Journey to Chinese Fluency podcast. Now, your host, Victor Yang.
Hello everyone, Victor Yang here and welcome to Journey to Chinese Fluency. Today I am joined by Nick Lenczewski. Nick is from the United States and currently living in Chiang Mai, Thailand. His native language is English. Apart from that, he speaks fluent Mandarin and basic Cantonese. Nick has studied Chinese for almost 10 years now. At 32 years old, he now has a website and a book that help people find a job and create a life in China. He also does Chinese translation and interpretation. Here's one interesting fact about Nick in his own words. I'm addicted to Seinfeld. Seinfeld is an American comedy TV series from the 90s. I've probably seen all 180 episodes 30 times each or more. I've been a fan since I was 10 and used to talk about episodes with my friends at lunch table in 4th grade. There are some good references to China and Chinese in several episodes. I have to say that is mind-blowing to hear someone watch 180 episodes of a show for more than 30 times. You have definitely spent so much time on that. Well, let's first welcome our guest for the day. Hello, Nick. Welcome to the show and great to have you here today with us.
Thanks, Victor. Thank you for having me.
So, Nick, are you ready to share with us your journey to Chinese fluency?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Awesome. So first, Nick, feel free to help us fill in the blank a bit for the introduction.
Sure. So I am originally from the United States, and I first moved to China to teach English in 2007, right after I graduated from college. And I stayed in China for about 6 years. Originally, I didn't know any Chinese, and I was just going to learn a little of the language was my only goal at that time, and then to teach English and travel.
So did you travel to China as an English teacher at the beginning?
Yes, I was in a city called Zhongshan near Hong Kong.
I see. So is that where you started learning your Chinese?
Yes, yeah. So I originally went, like I said, just to travel and to teach English, and then I found it was a lot of fun to talk to people in Chinese, and I would learn a little bit, and I really liked learning it. Felt like learning a code, so I just kept learning it, and that was it. I just 10 years later, I'm still learning it.
So you started out as a work to teach English, and then you've been traveling to a lot of different places in different countries, I guess.
Yeah, because it was easy to travel around Asia, and especially easy to travel around China after I knew Chinese. And so, I spent a lot of time going all over China and Asia.
I see. So that's interesting. So please share with our listeners why you learned Chinese. Why Chinese rather than another Asian language or any other languages?
So the main reason is that's because that is the country I went to. I wanted to go somewhere in Asia because I'd never been to Asia before, and I'd already been to Europe, and I thought China would be a cool place to explore. And so after I got there, like I said, I was just interested in talking to people, and I liked learning it, and so I just kept learning it, kept learning it. If I had been, made to live in Japan or another Asian country, I might never have learned Chinese. I might have learned some other language instead.
That's interesting. So rather than you yourself choosing which language to learn, you actually let the destination of your trip to determine which language you actually learned.
Correct. Yep. And I guess I should say, after a little while, I started to think about how I could use the language for my career. And at that point, I started to think, oh, actually, Chinese would be good because, there's a lot of talk in the news about China becoming more and more powerful and more jobs related to China. So, yeah, so that also played a little part as well.
So what's been your biggest motivation in learning Chinese? Especially Chinese is a difficult language. What's been motivating you when you get discouraged?
Yeah, I think just the joy of talking to people is the main thing. Every time, even when I move back to my home state in the U.S., Minnesota, I can find some Chinese people there and talk to them. It just makes me feel good to interact with someone in a foreign language. That's probably the number one motivator. And I like learning the characters too. It's very difficult.
Mhm.
It's not an alphabet. Many languages anyway use an alphabet, but Chinese doesn't, which makes it even more challenging and so more rewarding. So I like that part too.
Right. So when you feel demotivated, what did you do?
Um, I would talk to some of my Chinese friends on WeChat,
Mm.
like the app on the phone. I would talk to some friends on there, or maybe I'd watch a Chinese movie. I like Kuai Zi Xiongdi, the
Right.
Chopstick Brothers.
Mhm.
I like watching their movies and listening to their music. So yeah, movies, music, maybe read some China-related books.
Right, I see. So that's definitely some good ways to get motivated again because, when you talk to people about it, you definitely get motivations from your Chinese friends. So now please share with us your method of learning Chinese. What's been the most effective technique or method that's been working for you?
Sure. When I first started, the most helpful thing was doing listening. I would listen to Pimsleur language CDs,
Mhm.
and they would just have different sentences they'd say over and over and over. Like, I can speak a little Chinese. Can you
Mhm.
speak English? Things like that. So I would do a lot of listening. And another thing that really helped was getting a Chinese teacher that I could ask one-on-one questions. So, first of all, figuring out what I wanted to say. Things like, I would like fried rice or, different little things, or take me to the college where I work. And I would ask the teacher how to say those things. And then for speaking, the thing that helped me the most is just talking to people in day-to-day life, stores, restaurants, taxis, and just the people I would come across. For reading, I would read different children's books and just a general textbook, and also signs on the streets in China, menus. That provided a lot of uh,
Mhm.
mileage, a lot of motivation. And writing, I don't really do a lot of writing. When I was learning in 2007, I didn't have an electronic dictionary, or there's no phone app or anything. So I looked it all up in the dictionary. And in order to do that, you have to know the Chinese radicals.
Mhm.
So it forced me to learn that. And then from that point, it's done by strokes. So how many strokes are in the characters? And
Mhm.
so that helped me to learn writing, was looking up words. But then at that point, I sent a lot of texts with friends and different people I would meet.
That's a great overview of how you learned Chinese at the beginning. Like there's listening, speaking, reading, writing. You've pretty much covered everything. That's great. So let's go deep down a bit further in terms of learning all these skills in Chinese. So for listening, you just basically practice hearing a lot of sentences and repeating it. So that's for listening and speaking, isn't it?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I would listen, and then that's very important to repeat what you're hearing. Yes.
I see. So apart from that, how did you work on your vocabulary? Did you try to memorize, repeat, and then memorize those sentences, or did you try to learn all the vocabulary and as well as the grammar and stuff?
At the beginning, the way I remembered it was from using it. So because I didn't really know anything, so it was easier to use those words, those high frequency words. But then later on, I used something called Chinese Pod. It's another listening app you can use, and from those they have different terms. I would write those down, and then I would quiz myself on the different terms and make flashcards, and that's how I would do that.
Right. So most of the time you are just doing hearing and speaking rather than building vocabulary and learning grammar.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I find even when I just do the flashcards, if I don't use those words, I'll forget them. Like if I just do flashcards and then I don't encounter them any other places, I'll forget. So I've learned so much Chinese and I've forgotten half of it still. And so the using it is how I retain it. But I also do flashcards.
Right. That's a great point you have brought out. You have to use the phrase, use the vocabulary that you learned in order to retain it in your memory. So
Right.
I guess you have the advantage of being immersed in the Chinese environment.
Yes.
So in terms of reading and writing, so you started learning radicals and then later on you learn the stroke orders and all that. I think you have brought a good point that you learned different children's book. Is there
Right.
a specific reason you chose children's book?
Just because it's a little more fun to read than a textbook.
Mm.
And because the content is suitable for someone who is just learning.
Yeah.
It's, when learning to read English, I also started with children's books. And so, it made sense to do same thing with Chinese.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy because children's book is just much more entertaining and more engaging than adult books, isn't it?
Right. And it's a lot shorter. It's less intimidating.
Yeah, and plain language for sure.
Right.
So once you have passed the beginner's level, what did you do? Like, did you change your method of learning? Did you shift the way you approach Chinese learning?
I guess one of the main things I started doing was just speaking in longer sentences and using conjunctions. So words like so, and, because, therefore, things like that. That really helped me to get to the next level. Maybe you could say next level. I would say after 3 years in China, I was very comfortable speaking Chinese, saying a lot of basic things, but my knowledge was very limited. And it wasn't until I started using Chinese for work that I started to learn all sorts of other different Chinese vocabulary and ways of speaking. So using Chinese for work was the next way that really helped me to improve. And I started working as a interpreter and translator at a company in China, and that helped me to get a lot better with my Chinese.
So you started using your Chinese for work. So what have you been doing before that?
Yeah, when I was teaching English in China, I would speak in English, of course, and then sometimes I would speak a little Chinese at the end of class with students if we had some free time, and they would really like that. They would teach me some Chinese. But then, this other job I had at a company in China, also part of my job there was to teach English, but at the same time, it was to also be an interpreter and translator when I could. Yeah, I guess in that job at the beginning I didn't know a lot of terms, a lot of those business terms in Chinese, but by the time I finished working there, I knew a lot of them.
Nice. That's definitely a good way to get exposed to new vocabularies.
Yeah, exactly.
So during your journey of learning Chinese, what's been your biggest challenge in learning Chinese and how did you overcome it?
Sure. I'll be honest, it's like the more Chinese you learn, the more it seems you plateau, like you hit a level and it's hard to go beyond, you
Mm,
know, like you talked in the intro, I'm living in Thailand now and it's not so difficult to progress quickly, but then once you hit a certain level, after few years, several years, the progress is slower, or at least it feels slower.
mm,
But the way I overcome that is through repetition and volume, just doing it, a lot of it, and also making sure it's the right level. So I would use, or I do use Chinese Pod, and I try to do some of their like more, not too advanced, but pretty advanced, and I still don't listen to the most difficult levels, or if I do, it's hard to understand it all. I try to find content that is at my level, and so yeah, that's one way that has helped me a lot. And then two, talking to more people. In the U.S., I worked as a medical interpreter, and so I would listen to a lot of YouTube videos about medical related terminology, and that helped me to learn. So really just a lot of volume and
mm.
repetition.
Right. That's definitely a good way to overcome a plateau because
Yeah,
I personally learned English and I totally understand where you're coming from. I experienced that. During my journey learning English, you just have to keep going.
yep,
I guess the reason for that is because once you have reached certain level, it became not a necessity to learn more
yes,
vocabulary and speak longer
right,
sentences because you already have enough knowledge to communicate effectively, right?
right,
If you want to improve further, you just have to force yourself sometimes to look up dictionaries. Sometimes
right,
when I see a English word that I don't understand, but I can understand the gist of the whole thing, right? It's just one, probably a adjective that I don't
right,
understand. It's not that important, but I just have to sometimes force myself to look it up in order to actually learn that. Otherwise, I'll just miss the opportunity of this learning.
right. And two, I would add that it's, yeah, like you said, after there's no more need. You already know how to say almost everything you want to say. And so, but still, maybe you don't know that new grammar pattern or
Hmm.
that new adjective. And it's hard because whenever you want to say something, you don't use that adjective. You just use the one you're
That's right.
used to using. And
That's
so it's
right.
hard to remember to use those new words because you don't really need them necessarily.
Yes. This also reminds me of the 80-20 rule. So you spend 20% of the time getting to 80% of fluency level.
Right.
And then
Yep.
in order to reach the other 20% of fluency level, like 100% fluency level, you need to spend an extra 80% of effort to do that.
Right.
I think this fits this situation of perfecting your language skills to a level that basically break through the plateau and to improve to the next level.
Right. One thing I found that helps with that is if you can get in an environment where you don't speak any English, like for example, maybe you go to a Chinese city and nobody there speaks English. Like there are some places in China where very few foreigners. If you go somewhere like that and just, all you can do is use Chinese, that
Mm,
helps. It helps you to switch your mind into Chinese mind. Like even now when I speak Chinese, my mind most of the day is English. Um, so
mm,
that's one thing that could help.
good point. So how did you deal with accent or dialect?
That's another really difficult thing. I, yeah, I still have a very tough time with that. And especially when I was doing the medical interpreting in the US, a lot of the patients China is like Europe. There's a lot of people call them dialects. I
Mhm.
think they're more like different languages.
Yeah.
Of course, there's some similarities, but yeah, it's still pretty different. And so, just a lot of repetition. And I would read on some forums online, or I would learn some of the local dialects. Like I learned a little Cantonese and Shanghainese.
Wow.
I also used to live near Shanghai, and so that helped me to understand a tiny bit. Yeah, it's hard because you're not ready for it sometimes.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. So you did have people come up to you speaking Cantonese or Shanghainese rather than speaking Mandarin to you.
Uh, yeah, well, they were speaking Mandarin to me, but it's such a thick accent that you can hear they're not. You
Yep.
can tell their native language isn't Mandarin. It's like a dialect.
Hmm.
So like Cantonese, instead of saying like ni hao, they would say like lei ho,
Yep.
but they would mix it together with Mandarin. So it's Mandarin, but it's like there's a line between, like
Yep.
different accent, different dial or different different dialect, different language.
I guess it's especially for people from Hong Kong, they don't really learn very good Mandarin Chinese. I would say most of
Right.
the population still speak Cantonese in their daily conversation and rarely they need to speak Mandarin. And the fact is that they still need to learn a bit of Mandarin in order to communicate with mainland Chinese. And when they do that, they kind of mix their Cantonese with Mandarin Chinese because they don't really 100% learn the language. I guess that's
Right.
the reason that you're having difficulties with the dialect and accent.
Yeah, and so I think it's worth learning a little bit, like a few of the few words that you hear them always saying with the dialect or the accent.
Mm.
Like maybe they always say like neho instead of ni hao. Just learn that one word that helps.
Yeah. Well, you spent almost 10 years studying Chinese. I'm sure there's been many situations where you were embarrassed or, you had some funny moments. Can you share with us one of those moments?
Sure. I don't know how embarrassing or funny it will be for listeners, but for me, it was funny, and for the people that I was with, it was funny. One time when I was first starting to learn Chinese, I was out getting a foot massage with some of my friends, and I still didn't know a lot of words at the time. I could say things um, like he and beers, and I could say some numbers, and I knew how to say can speak, like 会说. And so anyway, that's another thing, talking with masseuses, like the people giving you massages. That's a great way to learn Chinese because you can practice with them. They will ask you like how old you are and where you're from and a lot of basic questions. And so anyway, we were trying to talk to them, and we couldn't really understand them and they couldn't really understand us. But I wanted to try to make fun of my friend, and so I said, ta, like he can only say, I want two bottles of beer, like 他只会说我要2瓶啤酒. And so the masseuses, they thought that was really funny, and my friend, he didn't know what I was saying. I thought it was funny. Yeah.
Right, I see. I guess it's because like that was the only phrases and vocabulary I had at the time, and then you made a full use of all your Chinese knowledge.
Right, right, exactly, to make fun of my friend. Yeah.
I see. Good one. So now tell us a success story, a most rewarding moment after you have became fluent in Chinese.
Sure. Probably the most rewarding moment for me was when I had a job offer to do a non-teaching job in China, and I enjoyed my time teaching English in China, but it was right after I finished college, and I didn't plan to become an English teacher, so I was always looking like how can I get a job that would let me do something that wasn't teaching English, and how can I find this job? And I thought, like maybe I could use Chinese somehow to get a job.
Mm.
And I didn't think I could ever do like interpreting or translating. Like I thought it was too I thought I had to be a lot better. And so, yeah, it was a really a great moment, rewarding moment when I did manage to get a job that was because I knew Chinese, and that job used Chinese, and that was also too. I started doing a little basic translating and interpreting.
That's definitely a rewarding moment. So when was that?
That was about 4 years after being in China.
You have made very good progress with learning Chinese in 4 years, and you started interpreting after 4 years. That's great progress.
Yeah,
I can't imagine myself learning English for 4 years and doing interpretation job. That's just impossible.
you should try.
Right. So what are you doing now with your Chinese?
I have been working as a medical interpreter in the US. So, for those, if you don't know what that is, it's the patients are, in my case, the patients are all Chinese, and then they need to speak to the doctor who only speaks English. And so I will be the person in the middle, and I repeat whatever is said. So if the patient says, like, I have a cough, then I say, I have a cough. And if the doctor says, like, are
Mm.
you taking your medicine? Then I would say, are you taking your medicine? And so I did that. And then I also have a website and a book. The website is ChinaLifeFiles.com, and my book is called Ultimate China Guide. And those are to help people who want to find a job and travel and learn Chinese in China. And so I do that. And I've also made a few kind of amateur movies using that have Chinese in those movies. And then also worked as a camp counselor. And
Wow.
yeah, I'm kind of in between jobs right now, you might say.
Well, you're doing a lot of stuff. First of all, I had some experience with medical interpreter. When I just arrived in Melbourne, Australia, I couldn't speak English, and I had to get a medical interpreter when I was seeing the doctor. Most of the time, it's some Chinese doing the interpretation. So
Mm.
in your case, you're a native English speaker and you're doing the Chinese translation. That's pretty impressive, I would say. Does the patient get surprised to see you being the interpreter?
Yeah, we could have a whole podcast episode about this. Yeah, I have a lot of stories about that. But yeah, the Chinese person, almost every time when they see me, very surprised. And yeah, sometimes I would do like video interpreting. So by video, the people they see,
Wow.
even not only Chinese, but also other people,
Yeah.
Americans from the US, they would see me like, whoa, you know, we
Yeah.
got a white guy,
Yeah.
like stuff like
No,
that. Yeah.
that's impressive. I would say that that's definitely some achievement you have made to do
Yeah.
this type of job. So you mentioned you have a website called China Life File.
Yeah, China Life Files. Yep.
Can you tell us a bit about your website?
Sure. So I mainly write different blog posts and make a few videos, but mainly it's to help people who are interested in moving to China or traveling to China.
Hmm.
Not so much studying. It does have stuff about studying Chinese. I guess it's geared more towards people who are going to China as opposed to maybe just learning at home. But if you're thinking of going to China, it's a good resource. And so I have some different tips on, like, if for your first time going to China, or if you've been an English teacher for a long time but you want to do something different or use your Chinese for work. I write about all those topics.
Cool. Sounds like a good resource. I'll definitely
Mm.
put that in the show notes. So you also mentioned you have a book called Ultimate China Guide.
Yeah, it's kind of the same topic as my website.
Hmm.
It's about how to teach English, travel, learn Chinese, and find work in China. And yeah, same kind of goal as my website. Um, yeah, and that's like on Amazon, and you can find it on my website as well.
Sure, I'll also link that to the show notes. Yeah, nice work for creating all these resources for people. Definitely check it out. So, how would you compare your life before you have learned Chinese and your life after you have learned Chinese?
Yeah, it's my life now is much wider. I can talk to, a large percentage of the world's population. Not only not only the billion people in China, but also, millions more Chinese people in other countries around the world. Like in the U.S., like I was mentioning, in uh, wherever I go in the U.S., in my hometown, it's funny, I'm from a small town in the rural Midwest in the U.S., and I met someone recently there who she's from the town I used to live in China, Zhongshan, and
Mm.
that's a pretty small, I mean, it's a medium-sized city in China, but it's not that, it's not like a big city. And, she was in a small city. She's from a smaller city in China. She's in my small city in the U.S. I thought it was
Mm.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, and two, now here in Thailand, there are also a lot of Chinese here, and I can speak to Chinese people here in Chinese, and yeah, everywhere I go, I can. It's like having a second, second home, second.
Open up a whole new world for you.
It did, yeah, yep,
Cool. So now share with us one special thing about the Chinese culture that is different to your own culture.
sure. Special thing. I guess people people in China, they a lot of times ask if you want something if you've eaten yet. Like when you first meet someone,
Hmm.
they'll say like "你吃饭了吗?" and which means like "Have you eaten?" And at first I used to be really confused by this, but it really is just more like "How are you doing?"
Yep.
And because in the U.S. we say "How are you?" We're not always like trying to learn their life story. It's more like, hey, just kind of like, hey.
Hmm.
And so that's one difference in the cultures. I think
Definitely.
because in China, people, didn't always have stuff to eat at some points, and
Hmm.
so that was one way of asking, like, if you're okay.
That's definitely a culture thing. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah,
Do you have a favorite city in China?
yeah. Zhongshan is definitely my
Hmm.
favorite.
Sure. Well, tell us a bit more about it.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. It's a very clean city, and the weather is good. It's pretty warm almost all year round. And in the winter, it gets a little cold, but not that cold. It's kind of subtropical.
Hmm.
Uh, it is subtropical climate, and yeah, it's not so crowded like Guangzhou or Shenzhen, and so it's a good city for living in. Like a lot of people in China say it's good for living.
Hmm.
A lot of people. I think that's kind of somewhere you might want to retire or like raise a family. It's it's not like a huge metropolis, but it's clean. It's really convenient. And two, as a foreigner living there, it has a lot of very foreign friendly. Like there are tons of like foreigner bars and like foreign restaurants and different events happening around the city. So yeah, I really like it there.
Interesting. Is there a specific reason at the beginning you went to Zhongshan instead of any other large cities?
Good question. There is. So the program I originally taught English in China with, they had about 8 different sites around China, 8 different colleges. They would send teachers, and one was in Jilin province.
Very cold.
Yeah, one was in Shenyang, and
Yep.
then there were several others in Guangdong province. And so because actually my aunt and uncle, they had recently moved to Hong Kong, and so I asked if I could be close to Hong Kong so I could
Mm.
easily visit them. And Zhongshan is only a few hours away from Hong Kong by boat or by bus, and
Hmm.
so they placed me in Zhongshan.
Oh, I see. That sounds reasonable. Is
Yeah.
there a tool, an app, or a website that you cannot live without in learning Chinese?
Yes, I I would say two are Pleco Dictionary for a smartphone, and
Hmm.
then WeChat for chatting with people practicing Chinese.
Yep.
Definitely those two.
Great apps. if you are to recommend to our listeners only one book in learning Chinese and or the Chinese culture, what would that be?
It's a book called Wild Swans. It's about the Chinese history, the modern history. It's written by a woman. I forgot her name now. I think she's from Sichuan province, but she writes about her grandmother and then her mother who lived during the Communist Revolution, and then also writes about her own life. So it starts about in the 1800s and then goes all the way up to a few decades ago. So it's a good covers all the modern history.
I just looked it up. It's called Wild Swans, Three Daughters of China by Zhang Chang.
Yep.
Awesome. So I'll definitely put that into the show note. So now, teach our listeners your favorite Chinese quote, phrase, or expression.
Okay, sure. There's one I like. It's 不要迷恋哥，哥只是个传说.
That's a funny one.
Yeah, and it's like, so it's basically, 哥 means older brother, but when you say it, and you have to be a male to say this, because you're referring to yourself.
Yep.
So you're speaking in the third person, and this is something that, like if you're talking to a girl and you kind of want to flirt with her and like kind of teasing her a little bit, so like milian is like kind of like crazy in love with, or like really interested in, and then 传说 is like a legend, and so you're saying like, don't like this, this amazing guy you're so crazy about, just relax. It's just like he's just in your mind, like he's just like this legend, like take it easy. It's just kind of like a cute little teasing thing to say.
Yeah, it's quite recent actually, this quote. I remember seeing that one day. I just laughed out loud. That was such a funny quote. I think it originated from one of the Chinese forum. And then a guy wrote that sentence, and after that, like people just started using that. Like it just went viral.
Right.
So this is one of the contemporary Chinese quotes.
Yeah.
Quite a funny
there are a lot
one.
of contemporary. I mean, like don't they call it like 网络语, like the internet words? There's so many new words.
Internet
created
slangs. Yeah.
all the time. Like we have them in English too, but I think there are many more in Chinese.
Yeah, they just keep on making things up.
Yeah.
Like some of the stuff we say, like Chinese say nowadays, are all originated from the internet. And we don't even notice that it's actually from the internet. Oh, actually, we know it's from the internet. But, like when you have these type of phrases, you can't even remember like what phrases or expressions did I use before I knew this word came out. I can't even remember sometimes. It's just crazy. Right. So if you are to give our listeners one single piece of advice in learning Chinese, what would that be?
Go to China and talk to people.
Go to China. Immersion, basically.
And talk to people. Yeah, immersion. But it's and it's more too than immersion. I think it's like, go somewhere that interests you. So like for me, China's really interesting. So it makes it easier to learn the language. If I went somewhere where I'm not so interested in the culture, it'd be a lot harder to learn the language.
I totally agree. Interest is so important to the success of learning a language. Right, so before we let you go, how can our listeners reach you?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to my website, ChinaLifeFiles.com, or you can send me an email at nick@ChinaLifeFiles.com. Or you could go on Facebook. I'm on Facebook at Ultimate China Guide.
Thank you so much, Nick, for your time sharing with our listeners your story of learning Chinese. Definitely, you have dropped a lot of value bombs in this episode. So all the best with what lies ahead and the journey of exploring the Chinese language and culture.
Thank you, Victor. Thanks for having me.
To our listeners, the show note is now available at ChineseTalkEase.com/8. Talkeze is spelled as Talkeze. Do you want to learn Chinese for free? Start your own journey to Chinese fluency with my video lessons at ChineseTalkeze.com. Talkeze is spelled as Talkeze. Also remember to join our Facebook group. Just head over to TalkChineseCommunity.com. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. Each month, I will choose one reviewer and give out a 1-year subscription to all my premium video lessons for free. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next episode.